Can you easily call your medical? I don't know. I think my husband's deceased. There's a tragedy at my home.
What's going on at 1231 Temple Drive?
I believe my husband is deceased.
Okay. And why do you believe he's deceased?
Because he's been, he's stiff and he might have had a heart attack. I don't know.
Okay. Did you just find him?
No, actually, it happened last night.
It happened last night?
Correct.
Okay. So did you find him this morning? Because I know you said that you believed it happened last night. Did you see him last night? Was he okay or was...
He was not okay last night. We had altercations and he stabbed himself and I ran into the bathroom and then when I came out I tried to help him and I saw he was lying in blood. And then I tried to help him and Correct, yes. And then I tried to help him and I woke up with sitting up next to him and I've been trying to figure out what to do.
Right. So you all had an altercation last night, correct?
Yeah.
Are there any weapons on scene now?
A knife.
A knife?
Mm-hmm.
So did he stab himself last night and he passed last night and you just didn't know what to do?
Correct, I believe so, yes.
Okay. Were you all drinking?
He was. And altercation was the night before, too, but I left the house and took my children with me because he was dancing them, too.
Mm-hmm. Were your kids there last night during this altercation?
No, they were not. They were not here, and they're not here now.
I know you first said that you thought he had a heart attack. So do you think it was a heart attack, or do you think it was due to the stabbing that he passed away?
Probably the stabbing triggered it, I guess. I don't know. It's a shoulder wound.
You say it's a shoulder wound?
Right.
Go ahead and give me your husband's first name.
Michael.
Michael. What's his last name?
Redlick, R-E-D-L-I-C-K.
The 911 call that was just played occurred on the morning of January 12th, 2019, around 10 a.m. The woman who called in to say that her husband had stabbed himself and potentially suffered a heart attack following is 45-year-old Danielle Redlick. Her husband is 66-year-old Michael Redlick. Officers arrive at the scene only a few minutes after this call comes in and find what is described to be something out of a horror movie. There is blood everywhere across multiple rooms, blood on the walls, door handles, bloody footprints, blood trails, a blood-covered knife on the ground, and another in the kitchen sink. And ultimately, they discover the body of Michael Redlick. It's visible that Michael had sustained a severe stab wound to his shoulder, and Danielle has slice wounds to her wrists. She claims these were self-inflicted. Danielle is quickly taken away for medical treatment. When she gets to the hospital, she reports no other injuries other than the cuts on her wrists and a small bruise on her arm. Doctors do a full evaluation and confirm that this is the case. No injuries other than what was reported by her. Once she is medically cleared, Danielle is Baker acted and sent to a facility for a number of days to evaluate her mental state. Whilst at the original hospital, and throughout this time while she's Baker acted, she makes a number of statements to people about what had happened in her house that night, and all of these stories vary in their finer details. I will dive into these details a little later on, but for now, essentially, the brunt of her story is the same to all of these people. She had been arguing with her husband for 2 days leading up to the incident due to text messages he found on her phone to and from another man. On the night of January 11th, she says her and her husband were home alone as their 2 children, Jaden 15 and Sawyer 11, were staying at friends' places. Michael had been drinking vodka heavily, which led to a physical altercation around 10 p.m. During this fight, Michael was smothering her in the kitchen, and she reached for a knife. Michael took this knife from her, and in a frantic state, stabbed himself in the shoulder. Using this moment to escape, Danielle runs to the bathroom and locks herself in. After a period of time which she can't verify, Danielle no longer hears movement within the house, and she ventures out of the bathroom to find her husband dead on the living room floor. At the point where Danielle told people about this version of events, a few days after the incident, Michael's death is being treated as a suicide by law enforcement. It stays that way until an autopsy is performed, and injuries on Michael's body are closely examined.
On the face, there was a incised wound, so something that's made with a sharp instrument. And then on the inside of the upper lip, there was an abraded contusion, so a very small bruise with a little bit of an abrasion, so you kind of get like a scrape. Moving down onto the torso, faint contusions or bruises on the chest, on the left side of the chest. And then also on the left side of the chest, kind of near where the armpit area is, was a stab wound. And then on the left arm, there were more contusions or bruises. And then also another area of contusion down on the wrist. And on the right arm, another small contusion. On the left side of the body, on the torso, there was a superficial incised wound. And when I say superficial, I mean kind of like a scrape or a scratch. So it's a linear wound, it's very shallow, it looks like a scratch. Cause of death was stab wound of the torso, and I classified the manner as homicide.
Based on the story Danielle had given, she indicated that after coming out of the bathroom on the night of the incident, she found her husband laying dead on the floor. She couldn't find her phone due to blood being everywhere, and it wasn't until the next morning that she found it and contacted 911. Cell phone data says otherwise. Most notably, close to 11 p.m. that night, the digits 911, 911 were entered into the phone, and the call was attempted. This of course didn't go through, as it's an invalid number. Furthermore, the phone was plugged into a charger at 12:30 a.m., and messages between her and Michael had been deleted. The next morning, the data on the phone indicates that she had used it starting around 7 a.m. A dating site was opened, and then 14 seconds later, Google is used to search, how long does it take before someone bleeds to death from slitting their wrists? 911 was properly contacted around 9:30 a.m. Interviews are conducted with friends and family, which begin to shed light on a tumultuous relationship shared between Danielle and Michael. Emails are found on Michael's computer that expose, in the months and weeks leading up to the incident, Danielle was very much not happy with him for a range of reasons that I'll cover later on. The scene itself is examined, and it's quickly discovered that a cleanup attempt had been made. The smell of bleach was in the air, and a blood pattern expert concludes that it's impossible to derive any significant information from the blood on scene due to the extensive cleanup attempt. Lying around the house, there were cleaning products, bloody towels, pools of blood smeared by footprints, streak marks from where blood had been wiped, something that looks like a blood trail, as though a body had been dragged around. There's blood on the walls and door handles, and there's a mop in a bucket full of pinkish liquid. It is described as truly something from a horror movie. 3 weeks following the incident, Danielle is arrested on a separate offense for violating probation. It was found that she had alcohol in her system at the time of Michael's death, which wasn't allowed. Whilst she's in custody, it's here that she's charged with second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. It's at some point during this time frame, Danielle begins to tell another story of self-defense. She says that Michael had been smothering her to death in the kitchen when she reached for the knife. Then it was her that stabbed him in the shoulder to get him off her. She says she never intended to kill, but ultimately, it was by her hand that he died. She goes to trial to face a jury. Although there is evidence presented by the state against Danielle, there is no smoking gun. Based on her story of self-defense, by the end of the proceedings, the jury is asked an important question. Is her story believable? Are her version of events credible enough that one could say that her actions were based in self-defense? As mentioned, the state does have some evidence, and like I've said a few times now, I will take a look at that later on. But Danielle's 7-odd-hour testimony is the key piece that would make or break her case. As a result, I'll be going through what she said with a fine-tooth comb, starting from the beginning. Keep in mind, as you hear these details, I'm not presenting them to you as fact, but as an in-depth retelling of Danielle's testimony.
Ms. Redlick, on January 11th, 2019, did you stab your husband?
I did. Yes.
Why?
He was suffocating me. I couldn't breathe, and he had me pinned down.
Can you explain more?
Well, I was scared, and I was just in fear for my life. He had thought he snapped, and I could die.
Why were you in fear for your life? Why did you think that you could die in that circumstance?
Just how he had me pinned down, and I couldn't breathe, and so just the look in his eye, his anger, and I couldn't get away.
Are you trying to get away?
I was.
You're trying to use something besides a weapon to get away?
Yes.
Do you have any choice but to use a weapon to get away?
No.
How many times did you stab him?
Once.
Is this the first time that your husband had ever attacked you?
No, but it was one of the worst, I'd say, scariest.
As her testimony kicks into gear, she's asked questions about her relationship with Michael and how it turned from he being married to her mother before starting a relationship with her.
So was Michael your stepfather at one point?
I guess technically, however, I didn't look at him that way.
How long were they married?
6 months. They were together a couple years.
So they were together for a couple of years?
Yes.
And how old were you during that time?
22, 23 years old.
So how do we go from stepdad to something else?
Well, my mother and my stepfather had split up after 20 years, and my mom met Michael, and they started dating. And she discovered shortly after they were dating that she had an aggressive stage 4 breast cancer. And so they got married in Vegas, and within 3 to 6 months after that, she passed away. And so they had been living in a home together with my 2 younger siblings. I'm the oldest of 5, actually. After my mother passed, the 2 younger children were in high school, my younger brother and sister, and they were living in the home with Michael and my mother. And so after she passed, my younger brother went to live with my stepfather, back with him, and had asked me if I wanted to move in, that he would continue to rent the home that they were renting so that my sister could at least finish another year of high school where she was. And so I agreed. And I was working and going to school at the time. We were just kind of handling the domestic duties with the kids, sort of, and I was working, and he was encouraging me professionally and sort of became friendly, was very supportive, and, there's time of loss for both of us, and we sort of bonded. And eventually it turned into a romantic relationship. I was going to school and working part-time at one point, or at that time, and he started coming up to the place that I worked. I was a bartender at night, so he started coming up to all the shifts that I was working and just visiting with me. And after that, he started inviting me to do more things together. And we and I grew to enjoy it. And he was kind of worldly and smart. So these are new and exciting things for me. So at some point, it turned into a romantic relationship.
Danielle explains that Michael was a very ambitious man who invested a lot into his career. He had practiced law for 13 years and then went back to school to pursue a passion he had for sports. Once completing those studies, he got into sports management and worked for different teams as an executive. An opportunity comes up for Michael to work with the Memphis Grizzlies, and this was a big move up for him. Michael takes the job and moves to Memphis, but Danielle stays behind in Cleveland. At this point in time, Danielle didn't feel comfortable with moving, as she hadn't disclosed to her family yet that she was in a relationship with the man who was once her stepfather. This is around the year 2000. Whilst the two are living in separate states, Michael purchases plane tickets for Danielle almost every weekend and flies her over to stay with him. He would show her around and take her out. After a year of doing this, on one of these trips, Michael takes Danielle to a beautiful neighborhood and tells her that he has a surprise. Danielle is shown a luxurious home that's located near a river. It has a pool, lots of space, and she's informed that it's been purchased for them so that they can properly start a life together. Danielle makes the decision to move to Memphis with him. When she gets there, she's enjoying a new place to live, had landed a job in the radio industry, and with both of them in careers that they loved, things are going really well.
At this point, how was the relationship?
It was good. I mean, like I said, odd circumstances how we came together, but it was good. We enjoyed our time together.
And how did the rest of the family view this at that point?
I think the sister that was living with us, I think she took it kind of hard, which I don't blame her. I think people were a little bit shocked, but other than that, didn't have much to say about it.
Was there ever any tension or physicality between you and your husband?
At times, yes.
How would that come about?
Through arguments, sometimes alcohol related, sort of thing. At times it would escalate. I started to notice that he would get physical when he was angry, very angry, or if he drank too much. A lot of manhandling kind of thing.
Can you describe to the jury what you mean by that?
Just grabbing me in the, by the arms a lot, sort of a controlling nature, sort of dominating. At times, slam me up against the wall, kind of stuff like that.
What was the first time that you can recall something happening that's more than just grabbing you?
Well, actually, the first time would have been back in Cleveland. There was one incident. We were coming back from a concert. I had saw an ex-boyfriend at a concert, and he was accusing me of wanting to have gone to the concert with the ex, and we sort of got into an argument about it. And I remember I made an offensive comment, which I wouldn't make today. I called him. I said at least he wasn't Jewish and cheap. And he backhanded me in the face and mouth, and my mouth started bleeding and my nose started bleeding. And we were in the car at this point. And so when I got to the red light, I wanted to get out of the car. And he grabbed me and I grabbed him back, and we kind of just went back and forth in the car. And then he explained to me that he was sensitive about those sort of comments because he had grown up with some of that kind of thing. It bothered him. So I really just kind of dismissed it. Pardon?
Were you able to move past that incident?
Correct. And one particular incident, and I remember he was coming home from work every day and he was pretty agitated. Something was really bothering him. I just remember that it was something, had to do with something with two of his bosses. And he was coming home and he was pouring a drink each night. And I was still pretty young at that point, so I grew up in a house where you eat dinner every night. And I noticed that Michael, when he would drink, he would skip dinner. And so he was doing this by the third night. I started to wonder, are you going to keep doing this? I think I'm just going to go ahead and, if you're not going to eat dinner, I'm just going to go down to the river. There's some, a city walk where they have some shops and eateries and stuff. And when I said that, he got irritated and said, "What, are you mad because I don't want to have dinner with you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, kind of at this point," because I said, "How's the wallowing working out for you?" I said something sarcastic. And I went to head to the door to leave, and he was near the door, and he moved in front of the door. And I tried to shove past him, and I feel like at that point he raises his fist and he just crossed me in the face, and I feel like, I don't know, like he took out every frustration that he had that week on me. And the next thing I remember was actually laying in his lap, and he was stroking me, and he was apologizing, and he was crying, and I had looked down and I had blood all over me, and he was telling me how sorry he was that He's going to take me out to a nice dinner tomorrow, and he wanted to go ahead and take care of me, let him take care of me that night.
Following this incident, the next day, Danielle's face isn't in good shape, and her tooth had been chipped. She calls in sick to work, and Michael brings her to his team's doctor. She reports that she didn't tell the doctor how the injuries were sustained, and he didn't ask any questions. According to Danielle, following the appointment, she was referred to a dentist and a plastic surgeon to fix these injuries. This doctor reports that although he remembers the appointment, it was a very long time ago, and according to his notes, he didn't refer her to a dentist, but does have records indicating she went to a plastic surgeon. He also states that at this time, Michael had some injuries to his face as well. Continuing on with Danielle's testimony, she informs that she didn't consider leaving Michael because his frustrations which led to the violence were all understandable to her. She states that apart from these incidents, which occurred from time to time, there was overwhelming good in the relationship, and she loved him. She felt as though it was worthwhile to try work things out and continue as they were. Although she wanted the relationship to work out, as time goes on, incidents like the ones you just heard occur more and more. Whenever they would happen, afterwards Michael takes Danielle out for dinner. He buys her gifts, apologizes, and all round takes care of her. In 2003, their daughter, Jaden, is born, and a year later, the couple get married. With the introduction of new life into their family, things do improve. Both are ecstatic at the birth of their child. Their careers are going well, and Danielle describes that life had once again become very exciting. In 2008, they have another child, a boy called Sawyer. In the same year, Michael begins to experience difficulties with his work. These troubles led him to drinking frequently, and the abuse within the relationship described earlier had begun to crop up again. Michael would grab Danielle, slam her against walls. He was mean, less attentive, and at times would put his hand around her throat to hold her against walls. When these incidents occurred, Danielle states that she would generally respond by leaving the house and going to her sister's until Michael calmed down. At times, she would fight back, hitting him on the chest and pushing him away. All of these instances of aggression never occurred when anyone else was around. When Sawyer was almost 2 years old, Michael lands a job in California, so the family moves there. Danielle is no longer working, but it's explained that things once again were running smoothly, as her husband's income was more than enough to support the family.
When we first moved to California, it was great. It was beautiful. We both loved it. We were exploring the countryside. He was working with the team, and we were going to games, and the kids were happy. So yeah, it was good.
So the relationship at that point, once you've moved to California, is going pretty well?
It is.
Did it continue that way?
No.
A year after this move, more work troubles would cause Michael great frustrations. New management was rubbing him the wrong way, and he claims a manager who was 27 years old, much younger than he was, had been belittling him during meetings, amongst other things. Michael is placed on probation, and shortly after is let go. Danielle tries to assist with the load by getting a job herself, but this in itself caused some problems, seeing as she would need to get a train from San Jose to San Francisco each day. Her income is not enough, and the family is burning through their savings, which was causing intense tension between the married couple.
He started drinking a lot more. I remember the kids were small, and I was kind of trying to shield them from it a little bit. You could see from our family room, you could see out into our garage, and I told him that he was going to have to start going out to the garage every night if this was what he was going to be doing. And I remember watching him often out there pacing back and forth, chain smoking and drinking. And I was worried about him, and I think it was because he was losing his job and we had just bought this home, so.
Is there physicality while you guys are living in California between yourself and Michael?
Not as much violence-wise, no. More, it's distance kind of thing.
Desperately looking for work, in 2014, Michael gets another job in Indiana. It's a good position and a huge weight off of his shoulders, as he had been feeling like he was failing his family. The decision is made to sell their California home and move the family to Indiana, but because Michael needed to start work immediately, he leaves first, while Danielle and the kids stay behind as she sells the home. The house sale takes a year to complete, and throughout that time period, Danielle claims to only have seen Michael a half dozen times. The house sells, and Danielle with the kids move to Indiana to reunite with Michael. At this new location, Danielle describes that although Michael's mood improved in many ways, he remained cold and distant from her, at times even mean. She's confused by this and is unsure why he's holding her at an arm's length. Most notably, they hadn't been intimate in a long while, so she asks him what's going on.
He said, oh, you noticed? And I said, well, of course, but, I just thought it with everything, with the job changes, and he said, no, actually, he was seeing a doctor in California about some issues that he had, low testosterone.
The main issue causing his low moods was erectile dysfunction. Danielle tells her husband that he shouldn't be ashamed of this issue, and she will support him throughout the process of getting the problem resolved. She suggests Viagra, but Michael informs her that he had been using it for some time and it hadn't been working. The man is spiraling into a depression and claims that he had begun feeling resentment towards his wife due to her being much younger than he was. He doesn't feel invincible anymore and is worried she'll leave him. Danielle claims that this would never happen, and together they look into testosterone injections. Michael starts this treatment, and it works to resolve the erectile dysfunction. But as the pattern has been forming, a solution to one issue seems to open up the doorways to others.
His behaviors just continued he wasn't the Mike that I met. His behaviors just were bizarre. I think I would liken it to, I thought it was like this kind of sophomore, juvenile male type behavior where he was sort of treating me like an object. But alongside that, there was a lot of aggression and it would become hostile. Vulgar comments like I'm a piece of meat, I'm an object, I'm his property. Some of it would be, I guess he would portray that it was kind of like lust or something, but to me, it wasn't appropriate, it wasn't okay. He was getting hostile and he was actually hurting me often during these episodes.
Are you saying that physically would harm you?
Yes.
Is this while you're being intimate or in another
Or
manner?
he's being sexually aggressive, yes. Or there were other instances where it would just come out of the blue, like perhaps I can tell things were bothering him. I can give an example. He was going to be going out of town for a work function for the week. And so he called me from work the day before and said, I'm going to bring home some movies and dinner. We're going to spend some time together tonight. And I said, okay. So he brought home dinner and alcohol. And we started watching the movie and there was a love scene. And this happened often. I noticed he would get flustered and kind of start acting strange. And during this particular movie, he approached me and he was aggressive and he was hurting me, so I moved to a separate couch and I told him that wasn't okay, and he just continued to drink through the movie and he passed out about halfway through, and I finished the movie, and at that point I just went upstairs to bed. I turned everything off and I let him know that I was going up to bed, but he was snoring. I didn't wake him up, so I went up to bed, and the next morning he had to leave, get ready to go out of town, and then he came upstairs into the bedroom and he said, why didn't you wake me up last night? So I'm in my bathroom at that point and I'm brushing my teeth and we're having this conversation, and the next thing I know, something hits me in the back of the head and I look and there's a box of tampons on the floor, and I said, did you just hit me with that? And he said, yeah, are you calling me a PUSSY? And I said, no, what are you talking about? And he said that I had left the box of tampons on his side of the sink. What was I trying to say? And this was very strange to me. And I said, I don't know, they just happened to be there. I didn't do that on purpose. Didn't clean up the bathroom, sorry. And I was upset. And I said, maybe you are acting like that, a PUSSY. And I walked away from him. And
How did he react when you walked away?
he said that he came up behind me and grabbed me from behind and started choking me. And I had never been choked that hard before by him. I started to pass out. I remember falling, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, is he going to kill me? And I remember reaching up, and I fell to my knees. And the next thing I know, I was sort of aware, and I was looking up at him, and he was just staring at me with this like surprised expression on his face. And he reached out his hand and he said, "I'm sorry." He looked stunned and surprised himself, and remorseful at that point.
Time passes, and Danielle is living in a state of fear regarding what her husband might do at any given time. Alcohol was progressing into a serious problem for him, and to cope, she also drinks. Alcohol-fueled arguments intensify, and according to Danielle, the same issue of him thinking she was accusing him of being less of a man would repeat over and over, but had manifested in different ways.
There was another time where he had a friend over, and I was unpacking some things in the basement that was long overdue for the kids, and I didn't come up and say hello that evening when typically I would. And when I did come upstairs, he asked me why I didn't come up and interact, and I said, "Well, you see, I was busy downstairs." And he said, "Well, I see you're drinking, you almost polished up a bottle of wine." And I said something sarcastic. I just said, "Does that mean there's not enough room for two alcoholics in this family?" And that's when he grabbed me, and this is when he pushed me up against the wall, grabbed me by the throat, and he picked up the wine bottle and he held over my head, and he said, "No wife of mine is going to be rude to company like that. You're not going to drink like this."
Was the friend still there, or had he left?
No, he had left.
Was anyone present for this?
No, the kids were in bed.
What's your mindset in continuing with the relationship while this is going on?
Well, I mean, at that point, I was obviously concerned about these issues, but I thought to myself, I wanted to stay in the marriage. I loved him. My kids were still very young. I just thought if we could get past this issue and begin to curb drinking, we could probably be okay. And so I was encouraging myself with that. And then I sort of just distracted myself. I went and worked on a photography license at that point, and was starting to do some things for myself.
In 2014, the family moves to Florida, again because Michael had landed another job. This time, instead of managing sports teams, he was in the world of academia. His role was the Director of External Affairs and Partnership Relations for the Sport Business Management program at the University of Central Florida. The job would see him take a pay cut, but he's optimistic about this move, telling Danielle that the warmer weather in Florida would give them a boost to their moods. Danielle doesn't work when they settle into a home there, but she does go back to finish some studies. Initially, Florida helps to improve the relationship, but as it happened before, the arguing returns. His aggressive tendencies worsen. He's short-tempered. When they were fighting, his face would turn red, and veins would pop from his neck. She believes the testosterone played a big part in this aggression. She reports that his muscle mass increased dramatically, but also his anxiety grew along with it. Anxiety that would translate into aggression towards her.
There was a particular incident where he pushed me into a dresser, and I fell and cut my head on the corner. And he took me to the emergency room with the kids, and I remember lying to the kids about what happened, and also to the doctors in the emergency room. At that point, I probably had caught up to him in the drinking a little bit. I was developing a little bit of habit myself. He was still drinking heavily, and I know that at one point we started sleeping separately because of this. And he was coming into the room at night drunk and basically attacking me. He was taking my pants off, and he was, and this was becoming like a daily thing. And I don't know if he was trying to work something out with him in his own mind, but it wasn't working for me. And when I refused, he slapped me, or he'd get hostile with me. And then the next day he'd apologize. I asked him to move out. I said, "This isn't going to work the kids were noticing, were getting older, they were noticing the fighting and hearing things at night.
Michael agrees to move out, and the year is 2016. While he's out of the home, he continues to pay the bills and would come and go from the house from time to time. Danielle makes food for him, and although his presence out of the house did help to dampen some of the fighting, there were still incidents that occurred.
I was in my master bedroom and I was doing some yoga. You could see we have a spacious bedroom, and he came in one day and he was standing in the doorway and he was making comments and comes over to me and he starts grabbing at me and I'm pushing him away because he's starting to hurt me, and he gets frustrated and angry and hits me with the back of his hand and hit me in the face when I was struggling. He was trying to take my pants off and I was struggling to get away from him.
Did you respond?
I started crying and sort of de-escalated things.
Was this at a time when he was living in the home, or was this while he was living elsewhere?
He wasn't living there. I remember once in public, he actually pushed me into a picnic table at a baseball game and followed me home. And I remember I had put up the garage door and I was standing in the garage and I was doing some things, and he's in his car and he's just staring at me, and he's got that look again, this like dead eye look where...
Tell me more about the look.
It's just like extreme rage, and like I just describe it as a dead eye. He just locks in on me, and it doesn't look like he's, it's like a point of no return, like a snap kind of thing.
Are you able to talk to him when this is happening?
No.
So what happens with the car that you were just explaining?
Well, he just accelerated, and I'm seeing him, and I'm looking at his face, and I can't believe that he's driving the car toward me, and he's going really fast, and there's no sign of him stopping, and he didn't stop, and I jumped into the bushes to avoid it, and I did go to the police on that one.
The couple reconcile, and Michael moves back into the family home. Around the start of 2018, in January, after a range of problems which saw Michael breaking doors throughout the house, the two had agreed to attend separate therapy sessions that were conducted in group settings. When Danielle goes to her meetings, Michael appears to be rather insecure and warns her to always watch out for men, as they would likely hit on her. After being told this a number of times, Danielle wonders if her husband is giving these warnings due to he himself engaging in the very behavior that he's worried about. One evening, when Michael's out of the home, Danielle looks into his emails and uncovers correspondence between her husband and a woman from one of his meetings. They were actively flirtatious in their communication towards one another and had even gone out on a few dates. In 14 years of being together, this was the first sign of infidelity. Danielle feels hurt and betrayed. She confronts Michael about it, and he reassures her that it's nothing, not something that she should worry about at all. They argue, and throughout this, Danielle feels as though she's being lied to, that Michael is downplaying and not being honest. She decides to attend one of Michael's meetings, and the woman in question actually approaches her and confirms Danielle's suspicions. Danielle is livid and tells Michael that if he wants to speak with this woman, he can't be living in the family home. Michael says that he's called it off with the other woman, but in 2 months' time, Danielle learns that this was untrue. At this point, she tells Michael to leave the home and live somewhere else, which he does. She files for divorce in mid-March of 2018. In late April, Danielle states that Michael had not only attempted numerous times to get her to retract the divorce proceedings, but he had actively been dodging the servings. Eventually, she gives in and agrees to not go ahead with the divorce.
He comes to the house one day and he was just picking up some things and he was sitting there and I asked him what was on his mind, and he said, he just looked at me and he said, I love my wife. And he said he didn't want to be with another woman. And the way he said it just softened me. And so we were affectionate, and we laid down together that day, and Ironically, someone knocked at the door, and I looked at the window, and I said, I think it's the divorce papers. And he just looked at me, and he said, please don't. And so I sent her away.
The process server. Did you feel that he ever weaponized your divorce attempt against you in any way?
Yes.
And how so?
Well, at the time, I wasn't paying the bills, and I really didn't have access to our money. I had a credit card, but he said that if I would follow through.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
As a side note, Danielle's reaction there, which seemed exaggerated frustration to the objection, it was due to a multitude of objections leading up to this. The attorney asked questions which by their nature required Danielle to restate things Michael had said to her, and then the hearsay objections hammered down.
And again, I had found out that I had...
Objection, non-responsive.
Sustained.
At that point, yes, it's...
All right, I'll get to you in a second. All right, I got to ask a question first.
And then he said, the house, the
Objection,
condo...
hearsay, Your Honor.
He said the condo is really great, and he wants to start taking me on.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry. He said that if I would follow through.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
By this point in the trial, I think she was doing her best to avoid these objections, and that little one slipped through, causing her reaction. Danielle claims that Michael had gotten through to her, both emotionally and logically, with his threats to leave her destitute following the divorce if it went through, and his repeated attempts to show her that he still loved her, coming to the house with flowers, and requests to take her out on dates. Danielle cancels the divorce, and agrees to try make things work. He doesn't immediately move back into the house, and while they're in a phase which she considered similar to dating, Danielle discovers something which makes her incredibly upset.
I found one of his books that he left at the house, and I picked it up because I was cleaning up. It was an Alec Baldwin autobiography, and I'm a fan, so I just opened it, and a piece of paper fell out. It was written by him. It was a speech of some sort, is what I gathered. And it was saying that he was newly divorced and single, and then he went on to say some things about his... you should be so lucky when you ruin a good woman that God will give you another one.
How do you feel at this point?
Shook up by it because I was surprised that he was saying this when we were clearly trying to get on better. And
Is what you're seeing there matching the interactions that you're having with your husband?
no,
Did you speak with Michael about it? Did you confront him about what you had found?
yes, I asked him about it.
And is that what leads to this email exchange?
Yes.
As you heard, the discovery of this recently written speech of sorts by her husband leads to a lot of negative emotions on Danielle's part, and they culminate into a pretty extensive email that she sends to him. The message is lengthy, so I won't go through it all, but here's a few excerpts from it.
I think it's funny how you choose to take the morally superior stance by telling me I'm not a Christian because I had a sharp tongue with you regarding your total immoral, shady actions that put truly loving, loyal, well-intended, caring people, namely your wife and kids, in a state of pain and emotional turmoil, not once, not twice, but continually and relentlessly. I know I'm bitter at times, I admit, and know it's not pretty, and I do need to get a grip, as you put it, but you have a lot of nerve as well. Although my words may be cutting, they are only sounds, a dull knife compared to the sharp, disloyal, deceiving, phony, and never-ending, selfish knife you continue to twist in my back, as if it's a sport at this point. I never recovered from the David sessions, honestly, and certainly you will never help to reverse or move any mountains for me. I know that for sure. I've never met anyone who convinces themselves over and over that their immoral, conniving actions are not just that, but are somehow justified and or reasonable, no matter their cost, harm to others. I notice whenever I confront or attempt to process, work through the cuts your knives wound me with, you have a hard time. Trouble admitting the true nature of just how sharp and dangerous their edges are. There are nonetheless weapons, and you are always claiming the right to hurt me with them. Ugh. That being said, I don't want to spew, rant, hurt anyone. That's the last time and the worst of it in this letter. Actually, I'm writing this to free myself from the bondage I live in for almost a decade. Not all your fault, but I have been so emotionally beat up, my heart assaulted over and over in ways I never imagined possible from someone you love or spent so much time with, invested so much with, had children with. But really, I don't know how to be happy loving someone who does not represent the things I love or hold sacred. That just sets the stage for pain and for struggle, conflict as it has. I just want to be happy now. I made up my mind that is what I need to commit to. Not a person or marriage, but my own true happiness. What a concept, I know. I think some of us have the subconscious belief deep down that we don't deserve to be happy, or that we don't get to be happy until we have suffered and or bled to death first. Well, I think I might be one of those people, and as illogical as the previous statement is, I have suffered, even bled to death, I'd say. BTW, for the record, I really wanted the Romeo and Juliet story. I wanted a soulmate to trust, melt into, be there for, even die for if it came down to it, show the depth of my love, and hopefully vice versa. Or just that one person who had your back and you had theirs no matter what. I hope we pull out a better future for our kids. I hope we get back to or become the right people for them, independent of the failed marriage. Help me help them, please. I'm clearly not perfect and may even be a crappier person than I ever thought I had potential to be, but damn it, I love with great depth too.
This leads into the fall of 2018. Danielle considers herself separated from Michael, but does claim that he appeared to not think they were, as he was still showing signs that he was hoping the marriage could work. Around this time, he comes to Danielle and admits that their finances are not doing well. Him paying rent for a separate property is putting a huge financial strain on them, and the family will be negatively affected if they don't do something about it. Danielle doesn't have access to the accounts and takes his word for it, allowing the man to move back into the family home. As it was getting onto the holiday period for their children, the two agree to do their best to be amicable. Although Danielle doesn't believe their marriage has a future, when Michael moves back in, things do improve. Hostility within the household greatly reduced, and Michael continued to do his best to show his wife that he loved her. Danielle didn't feel the same, and in summer of 2018, she joins a dating website where she begins talking to a few men.
So Meet Mindful is an app and dating website focused on a market that is interested in personal development, health, wellness, yoga, organic eating, and other mindful activities. When the user signs up for an account, they fill out a profile, and this is the data that was entered in for a number of various questions, like what they practice in terms of their mindfulness.
So does this indicate that when Ms. Redlick signed up for it, she indicated that she was separated?
It appears so. Looking for down-to-earth, kind of deep would be interesting, passionate, zest for life type guy with sense of humor to spend time with, and hopefully shares same definition on love. Also not going to lie, love the whole Romeo Juliet fairy tale, but I keep it real. I think having a real, meaningful, and strong connection is what appeals to me. As a part of account creation, the user would have a chance to upload several photos representing themselves.
Would you please read what the user of this account wrote to Mark?
Hey Mark, I ended up not going to Disney Springs, but I'm leaving it on the list. The weekend got a little off track with the unexpected, however, all good. Sometimes you just have to go with what life puts in front of you. Actually, that's technically called surrendering to life, which is probably something I should practice all the time. Sorry, not preach my mindfulness, LOL. So when do you leave for Buffalo? I'm jealous. You may see snow. If you happen to be captivated and want to share a pic or two, feel free.
Throughout this period, at times, small arguments cropped up here and there, yet in other instances, Danielle and Michael were intimate, She admits that most of these happenings, both positive and negative, were alcohol-fueled. There's an incident in November 2018. It was their anniversary weekend, but because Danielle didn't feel as though they were in a loving relationship, she had made plans to head out of town for one of her friend's birthdays. In the week leading up to this, Michael was completely fine with those plans, but when the day came around, he was unhappy and whining. He asked Danielle all day to cancel her plans and let him take her out to dinner instead, and after a while, she buckles. Her plans are cancelled, and she goes out with Michael. Whilst at the restaurant, after drinking, the two begin to argue. The argument spills over to when they get home, and Danielle says that overall, it was a terrible night. The next morning, once more, she tells Michael that she can't do this and he has to move out. This upsets him, and as he was leaving to go to work, the moment once more escalates into a yelling match. He jumps in his car to drive to work, and as he looks up, he sees Danielle throwing his business suits out onto the street, something she had done once before in the past, and knew that he hated it. Michael is furious. He switches the car off and runs toward her. Scared, she locks him out of the house, which causes him to kick the front door until it breaks open. Nothing much else happens in this incident, as Michael then leaves to go to work, while Danielle contacts a handyman to come fix the door. In December of 2018, Danielle finds email communications between Michael and a person whom she believes is his ex-wife. She gets very upset about this, and once again sends him another angry email. At the time of sending this email, Danielle admits that she herself was using a dating website and was speaking to other men. She's fully aware of the hypocritical nature of her email. To explain, she states that she was upset because finding this email brought up a lot of hurt and negative emotions from the original time she found him speaking to another woman. Furthermore, this email exchange between Michael and the suspected ex-wife occurred in 2012. If Danielle's suspicions were correct, it meant that Michael may have had a long history of infidelity when she herself was loyal. This now leads us to January 10th, 2019, approximately 2 days before Michael was stabbed. The morning of, their children had left for school, and Danielle is taking a shower. When she gets out, Michael is sitting in the bedroom across from her, and he looks agitated. When she asks him what's wrong, he replies, "Why don't we ask Caesar?" and then holds her phone up. Caesar was one of the men Danielle had been communicating with. Michael asks if she is sleeping with this Caesar, and Danielle informs him that it's not like that. They've been speaking for a few months, but have never met up. This infuriates Michael, because the text message on her phone that he read saw Caesar inviting her out to a football game. This man had also sent a photo of himself, which clearly shows that he's a jiu-jitsu instructor. Michael gets up and is directly in front of Danielle, screaming into her face. He grabs a book and throws it against the wall when Danielle decides to try continue on with her morning. She tells him that she won't be speaking to him while he's like this. She starts to get changed, and Michael corners her in. Danielle repeats over and over, "We can talk about this, but you have to calm down." That wasn't happening. So Danielle grabs her belongings and says she's going out to do some errands. As she's leaving the house, she can hear Michael yelling at her, "Where are you going? Get back here. I'm not finished with you yet. Are you going to meet Loverboy?" She drives away to a shoe warehouse, where she was going to make an exchange, and when she leaves the store, she sees Michael parked up next to her car. There's no direct interaction here, but he stares at her in a seething manner. When she drives away to the next store, she noticed that he had followed her here as well, but she tries to ignore him and proceeds inside to do some shopping. Whilst she's at the cash wrap, Michael enters the store and storms over. He yells, "You're a fucking piece of work. Did you hear me? You're a piece of work." Feeling embarrassed by what's going on in this public setting, Danielle quickly leaves the store with Michael in hot pursuit. As he chases her back to the car, He's poking and prodding at her with his finger whilst continuing to scream and yell. She quickly jumps into her car and locks the doors. He stands out there staring at her for approximately 60 seconds with no words. The man makes his way back into his car, and they both sit in their respective vehicles in silence. Hoping to reason with him, Danielle calls Michael, and at first he speaks low, but this quickly shifts into uncontrollable anger. He says things to her such as, "You're little miss holier than thou. You're not gonna have a husband or a life now." And he says, "Caesar's a Puerto Rican too, just like your stepfather, the loser where I found you." Danielle hangs up the call, and Michael tries to ring back but can't get through, so he leaves 2 voicemails.
Really love doing this to me. Sleeping with me, and then touching them immediately, calling them, whatever you were doing, however you were communicating. Laughing behind my back. Yeah, Mike, you don't even know I'm really fucking you now. You must have really enjoyed that, didn't you? You must have really gotten a great laugh out of it the other night. Oh, I think I'm going to start studying jiu-jitsu. Yeah, right. You must have just been howling inside through all this. That hurt. It's groveling in what you were doing to me. I'm going to take jiu-jitsu classes. I'm going home. I really appreciate it if you check into a hotel.
Danielle decides to drive back home after an hour or so, and when she gets there, as stated in the voicemail, Michael is already home. He asks if she's been catching up with her boyfriend, and Danielle responds that she has to do a job interview via telephone. Michael grabs her phone and walks out the door. She tries to get it back, and at this time their daughter comes home from school. With this as a distraction, Danielle manages to retrieve her device, and Michael drives away somewhere. Danielle heads inside and starts the phone interview in the kitchen. 10 minutes pass, and Michael comes back in. He starts yelling, "She's a liar. Don't hire her. She's a lying bitch." As a result of this, Danielle walks outside and continues the interview in her locked car. The interview proceeds whilst Michael bangs on the car door, screaming similar things to what was happening inside the house. Frustrated, Danielle decides to drive away and finish the interview in another location. When the interview is over, she sits in her car and thinks to herself, "This has been going on all day. The kids are going to need dinner soon, and Sawyer has an event to attend later that night." She wonders how the night's gonna unfold, with Michael acting the way he is. She calls her husband to see if he'd calmed down, but he hadn't. She asks him anyway if he can pick up some dinner for the kids while she gets Sawyer ready for the show, and he tells her that this isn't happening. She can get her ass home and take care of it. Danielle picks up some pizza on the way back home, and while the children are eating away from the kitchen, Michael goes to the freezer and pulls out some vodka, which he proceeds to consume heavily. He grabs a glass and fills it to the top, then asks Danielle, "Why don't you join me?" tossing the glass at her. It falls and shatters on the floor. Danielle begins to clean the broken glass, and as she does so, Michael grabs her arm, but he lets go when their son walks into the room. Danielle once again makes the call to leave the house, and she drives to a nearby shopping mall for a bit. A text message is sent to her from her son, and it reads, "Mum, they're yelling. Dad's drunk and I'm scared." Her daughter calls her and says that she's upset and needs to get out of the house. So Danielle comes back home, and at this point, things seem to have calmed down as it was getting pretty late. She slips into the master bedroom upstairs, not fully knowing where Michael is, but soon can hear him arguing with their daughter. At this point, Michael realizes Danielle is home and comes storming up to the bedroom. She claims that he looked like he was very drunk. His face was red and he was hyper. He slams Danielle against the wall, and in the heat of the moment, she gets away and locks herself in the bathroom. Michael's kicking the door and screaming, "Who are you talking to on the phone?" There's a closet in the toilet, so Danielle hides in there and locks that door. As she does so, the main bathroom door is fully kicked in and it busts open. Danielle texts her daughter and says, "I have to get out of here. Might get a hotel and you can come with me." Their daughter distracts Michael away from the bathroom, and using this as an opportunity to escape, Danielle rushes out of the house and back to the car. There are a number of recovered text messages from this period of time, and I'll read through some of them now. Danielle messages her daughter Jaden at 8:09 p.m. "Are you in your room?" Jaden replies, "Yes, he just came in." Danielle writes back, "Stay in your room. Do not engage." At 8:20 p.m., Danielle says, "I think I'm gonna leave. You can come with me." Jaden, "Where are you going? What about Sawyer?" Danielle, "I need to get out of here. He's being violent." Jaden, "I love you so much, Mum. Are you okay?" Danielle, "I think Sawyer will be okay, but I can take him too. I just need to get him away." Jaden, "Where are we going? Do you want me to pack a bag for Sawyer? I flushed a lot of his vodka down the toilet. He doesn't know. There's only a bit left now." Before these messages, Sawyer had messaged Danielle at 5 p.m. and said, "Mum, they're yelling so much." At 7:38 p.m. he says, "Please help me. He's drunk. They're screaming curse words." At 9:20 p.m., Danielle had driven Jaden to her friend's house and dropped her off. Danielle then proceeds to communicate with Sawyer via text to discern the state of Michael. After it's verified that Michael is passed out and snoring on the couch, she says to her son via message, "You shouldn't sleep by me in case he gets up. I will go upstairs when I come in, and we be very quiet. Sorry about all this mess. I'll wait a bit. Can you open the garage so I can come in that way?" Danielle sneaks back into the house after these messages and goes to bed upstairs. Michael is passed out on the couch. No more interactions are had on this night. The next day, January 11th, Danielle wakes up to Michael yelling at Sawyer, demanding the boy tell him where his mother is. Michael proceeds to walk around the house and finds Danielle upstairs. He's dressed and ready for work, but before he leaves, he says to her, "I'll be back. I'm not done with you." Danielle takes Sawyer to school after cleaning his foot up from cutting it on the glass that had been shattered the night before. Throughout the day, Danielle takes care of chores and communicates with Michael via text. Through these communications, he repeatedly accuses her of having lunch with her boyfriend. Danielle collects her daughter from school, and when she gets home, Michael is there with the cleaner. He's sitting on the couch, and as Danielle enters, he tells her, "You better have a good excuse or lies as to where you've been." Danielle says, "We're not doing this again today, especially not in front of our daughter and the cleaner." So she leaves to collect their dog from the groomer. Whilst she's out, her daughter makes plans to stay at a friend's place and leaves the house to go there. When Danielle gets home, Michael isn't there. The plan for this night was to take Sawyer to a football game, which was starting at 8 p.m, and Michael is coaching the team. Danielle jumps in the shower to get ready to go, and as she's in there, Michael enters the bathroom. He pulls out his phone and starts videotaping her, all the while saying things such as, "Let me get one last look at you. I'm gonna send this to your boyfriend. I hope he fucks the shit out of you, then beats your face in. Then I'm gonna beat both your faces in. How about that?" This goes on for a bit, and he eventually leaves the room. Then Danielle gets out of the shower, and as things have been happening, he follows her around the house, saying more of the same that you've heard so far. Included with the harassment, he threatens to take the house and leave Danielle penniless. He says he's going to send her back to where he found her, and she better not show up to the football game either, otherwise he'll tell everybody what a horrible bitch she is. As Michael is leaving to take Sawyer to the game, he grabs Danielle's phone and says that he's gonna throw it in the lake. Desperate to get it back and highly frustrated, Danielle runs inside and grabs a carton of eggs, then proceeds to hurl them at Michael's vehicle. This manages to distract him, and Danielle retrieves her phone. Michael at this point leaves for the game. A short time after, Danielle receives a text from him saying that she can come to the game after all. She takes this as a sign that he's beginning to calm down. Progress is being made. It's at this point, some friends of the two recall what Michael and Danielle's demeanor was like when they saw them that night at the field.
Yeah, as we were leaving the game was over. We were just walking to the parking lot together because the boys were getting ready to leave. So I did walk out and just had a brief conversation with her.
Okay. And so did you have an opportunity to observe Danielle that evening?
I did, yes.
And what was Danielle's demeanor that night?
She just seemed irritated, upset. Something was on her mind. She just said it had been a strange evening.
What about this even limited interaction with Danielle struck you as not normal?
She was quieter than usual, distracted maybe.
Did you observe that she seemed upset or on edge about something?
I think the comment that I made at the time was that she seemed off, and I couldn't really place it, but she just seemed different. I was after the game, they finished the game, they met with the boys, and we were both heading towards our cars, and I hadn't seen him beforehand, and so I kind of went up and did we did that man hug where you shake hands and hug, and just kind of a, hey, how are you? Haven't seen you in a bit. And he was cordial, and Mike was always one of those people that would really focus on the person that he was with. And so he was very good at eye contact and just focusing on that person. So
was there something about how he interacted with you in that particular moment that was different than what you were used to?
Yeah, he was distracted. I mean, it was, again, in my heart of hearts, I would have said off, but I mean, his handshake was not the normal firm, gregarious kind of a thing that we would get. He just seemed like he needed to go somewhere. Like almost like, I've done my coaching, now I need to leave,
Did you see Danielle and Mike interact at all?
No.
Following the football game, Sawyer had a plan to go to his friend's house for a sleepover, which was organized weeks earlier. So when Danielle gets home, it's just her and Michael in the house. She's sitting in the breakfast area of the kitchen, and Michael walks in, grabs a bottle of vodka from the freezer, which he'd purchased earlier that day, as seen on liquor store surveillance footage, and he begins drinking. He asks Danielle, "Aren't you afraid to be home alone with me?" Danielle answers, "As a matter of fact, yes I am. We're going to have to go back to our living arrangements with you out of the house." Michael doesn't respond, just stares at her intensely. He walks over to her and utters the words, "Sam, Katie." Danielle is confused, but believes this to be in reference to a character from a movie they had recently watched together, an antagonist who was a crazed ex-con chasing down two women. Danielle replies, "Okay, whatever, that's weird." She's going to go out to get some food, and Michael informs her that he might go out as well to see what sort of women he can pick up. Danielle leaves, purchases some McDonald's, and then comes home. When she gets back, no one else is there. She starts to eat her food, and Michael comes in. He's red in the face, and at this point looks very drunk. He snatches her phone from the table, and also the burger from her hand. After some aggressive comments regarding Caesar, he takes a bite of the burger, and then spits it in Danielle's face. At this point, she's had enough. She stands up, grabs her bag, and says, "You know what? Maybe I will go out with Caesar." This sends Michael into a fit of rage. As Danielle is walking through the kitchen, he violently grabs her, and she falls to her knees. As she's trying to get up, she feels something hit her in the back of the head, but is not sure what it is. Managing to get onto her feet and turn to face him, Michael slams her onto the center counter island, and using a firm grip on the side of her head and hair, he holds her down in a position where she has her back to him and face planted against the counter. He mushes her face with his fist. It's not a punch, but more an unpleasant, hard rubbing motion, and in this moment, she wiggles around to face him. Still being pinned to the counter, he puts his hands over her nose and mouth, and presses down with incredible force, causing her to be unable to breathe.
When you realize that you're not able to breathe, what's in your mind at that point?
that he snapped and that he's probably going to kill me.
Why do you believe that?
Well, because I couldn't breathe and I was starting to freak out at that point, and he wasn't stopping.
So what do you do? What are you doing?
All I can do. So I've got a free arm here, and the drawer in front of me is the only thing I can do, and I know that there's items in there.
How does it continue from there?
Pulled the knife out, and I don't know if he saw it, but he released my head, so I'm able to move.
Okay. How do you position? So you said that you're able to move a little bit. What position do you go into?
Slightly more to the left, turning toward him.
Does he back away from you?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
He says, "What, are you going to stab me?" And I take the knife and I position it and face it toward him.
What does he do at that point?
He immediately just goes for my chin and puts me back, and I stabbed him at that point.
What do you do at that point?
I run. I run the opposite direction. I thought he was still coming after me.
So what does he do? When the knife goes into his body, when you stab him, what is his reaction?
He backs away at that point, and he sort of backs away this way, and I ran the opposite direction.
What happens with the knife?
I don't know. I guess it dropped. I don't know.
Did you believe that you had killed him?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay. Speak to that, please.
I just didn't think it was a fatal exchange. Like I said, I thought he was coming after me still. I thought it probably made him madder, if anything. I didn't even know that. I knew he'd probably be hurt, but I didn't think it was to an extent that he would be, die from it or something.
Danielle once more locks herself in the closet section of the bathroom, seeing as the door to the room itself was broken. She's panicking and can't believe what's happening. The plan is to lay low and hope he doesn't find her, as she can still hear him moving around and yelling her name. The time is close to 11 p.m, and she intently listens out for Michael. After a while, there's no more noises coming from the other side of the door. Thinking that he might be waiting for her to come out, she musters up the courage to leave the bathroom.
When you come out of the bathroom, what do you see?
See blood on the floor.
Where? Into the bedroom?
Yeah, at the bathroom door and leading into the bedroom.
When you see that, what is your mindset when you see the blood on the ground?
Well, I'm startled by it, and
Why are you startled by what you see on the ground?
because it's blood, and it was alarming, and it was quite a bit.
So what do you do?
I follow the blood
Where does it lead?
into the living room.
Do you go into the living room?
Yes.
And when you go in, what do you see?
I see my husband sprawled out on the floor.
Is he moving at that point?
No.
What do you do when you see him on the ground?
I yelled his name. I said, "Mike," and he didn't answer. And I was thinking, well, I don't know, is he being dramatic or something? I didn't know what was going on. So I yell his name again, and he's not answering. So I get closer, and I'm saying his name, and he's not answering. So I go down on my knees and I touch his face, and there's no response. And
Did you see him move at all?
no, not at all.
Even if you touch him, is there any reaction?
None.
So what do you do when you touch his face and you don't see a reaction?
So I lean in closer, and I put my ear and my hands on his chest to see if I can hear or see if he's breathing. And it doesn't seem that that's the case.
In the direct moments after discovering that her husband is dead, Danielle is in a state of intense panic and shock. She looks around for her phone, but slips on blood and can't find it. She hadn't seen it since Michael snatched it from her earlier in the night. Eventually, though, she does manage to locate it.
What do you do when you find it?
Grab my phone, and in my mind, I'm calling 911. However, I'm looking at him, and I just start thinking, I start crying, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, well, can I help him? And I start...
Try to help him?
Yes.
How so?
I start breathing into his mouth, like trying to resuscitate him. And I'm doing that, and I'm getting nothing. At that point, I turned to my phone, and I did dial 911, and I think my thoughts were racing at that point. I don't know how coherent they were, and I guess I dialed 911 twice, and so it didn't connect. And at that point, I just went into like a full-blown shock.
What's in your mind when you try to call and it does not go through?
I think it's just sinking in that he's dead, and I start to just kind of panic, and there's blood everywhere, and I went and grabbed some towels out of the linen closet in the master bath, and I just grabbed a handful of them, and I walked out toward him, and like some dropped on the way, and I got down next to him again, and I think I was on my phone still nervously, and I think I just made a series of really bad decisions at that point. Nervously, I started looking at texts from my kids, texts from Caesar. I guess I deleted Caesar's text.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. I think I was just starting to think about my kids at that point, and again, just a bad decision. And I think I deleted his text too, which I don't know why, because I think those could actually...
Objection, Your Honor.
What was in your mind at that point when you did it?
I don't know. I think I was thinking about my kids for the most part.
What do you mean by thinking about your kids?
Just what was happening here, that, this happened between us, and I don't know what I was thinking. It was kind of irrational, all of it.
You called 911 again that night?
I did not.
What was the point of cleaning up the blood?
I don't know. I think I was just... in shock and nervously doing things.
Did you do anything else that night?
No. No, I cried next to my husband. I fell asleep sitting up next to him. And at one point, I got up and went to the brown chair.
Do you know when you wake up?
I must have been like 7-ish or something.
When you wake up, what do you do?
I look around at the horror scene, and I don't know what to do. I know that I have to call 911, that's for sure. And I start thinking about my kids.
So did you call 911 then?
Not at that point.
What do you do next?
I think I got on my phone and I started to I was thinking about my kids, like I said, and I thought, maybe it's just better that I go with him. And so then I Googled, how to slit your wrists. And that's what I attempted to do at that point.
Why do you go from wanting to slit your wrist to calling 911? What changes there? I heard something say, "Not like this, Danielle, not like this. Your kids do need you. They didn't need to be without both parents."
That concludes my summary of her direct examination. We'll take a look at other things she had to say later on, but at this stage of the video, now that you've heard the main portion of Danielle's story, it's time to take a look at some of the state's evidence against her. The state brings 3 witnesses to the stand, who all spoke to Danielle in the days following her husband's death, and each one has a slightly different account of what was told to them. For example, one witness claims that Danielle told her that she vomited when she saw her husband's body, yet no vomit was found on scene, and Danielle herself claims that the person was incorrect in this detail. She never mentioned anything about vomiting, she says. This same person also stated that Danielle told her Michael had said Sam Katie, the movie character reference, a number of times, and he even yelled at her when he was bashing at the bathroom door trying to get in. But again, Danielle refutes this and says that Michael only said it once in the kitchen. Danielle informed her she was having a shower when Michael came in, and they were arguing in there, not in the kitchen. When she got out of the shower, Michael lay dead on the floor. No reports to this individual regarding the story she told on the stand. What is constant between all of these witnesses is that Danielle never told any of them that she had stabbed her husband. Now that we know she had essentially lied to them all about a very important detail, and scrutinizing all of the minor details between each person's recollection, Danielle is argued by the state to be a highly manipulative individual. Furthermore, when the detective came to visit her a second time to perform a DNA swab on the 18th of January, she indicates that Danielle was incredibly upset at her presence there. She was combative and argumentative, and was frustrated that the situation could turn into a murder investigation. When Danielle was in hospital, and this same detective interviewed her a few days after the incident, Danielle had watched a news report that presented Michael's death as suspicious. She focuses on this detail and has a lot of questions for the detective regarding how the news was getting this information, as she was adamant that Michael's death was a suicide. Following her arrest, a jail phone call is had between Danielle and her daughter. I can't play the audio from it due to the quality being barely listenable, but what one can take away from the conversation is that Jaden, Danielle's daughter, was very unhappy with her mother, and the fact that she didn't tell her that Michael's death was by her own mother's hand. Yet another person that Danielle lied to. The relationship between Danielle and Jaden had become strained following her arrest, and when Jaden took the stand, she let this be known. Audio and video was not documented throughout her testimony, but from articles I found, it would seem that Jaden feels as though her mother is at fault.
And we were talking about the testimony of Jaden Redlick on the stand, how important it was. We both agreed that she was a star witness for the state. I want to go through what we know so far, some of the things that she said on direct examination, then we'll discuss. Let me begin here. Jaden essentially says, she's asked on direct about her relationship with her and her father. Jaden says, my dad and I were very close. We practically did everything together. He took me out on daddy-daughter dates all the time. We were very close. I told him everything. Prosecutor, what was your relationship like with your mother? Jaden, very toxic, very manipulative. Defense attorney, objection, argumentative. Prosecutor, what was the relationship like between your parents? Jaden, very toxic, tumultuous, very rocky. Yeah, it was not a good relationship, very rocky. Prosecutor, who was the primary source? Jaden, my mother. Prosecutor, why do you say that? Jaden, if there was an issue between them, it would be brought up by my mother. It was very rare for me to see him get angry and upset. That night, he told me he was sorry, that he loved me, and he wished I hadn't seen him like that. The next day, I went to school, and those were the last words we ever exchanged.
She states that Danielle is manipulative, a liar, and the source of all conflict between her parents. To show that Danielle wasn't emotionally affected by Michael's death, a responding officer testified about his observations of Danielle when they found her at the house.
At first, she's on the phone. She's walk out, and I can see that she was upset. I don't know, she was upset. And then later on, after we searched the house, and standing there watching her, she didn't appear to be in distress or upset anymore. So initially, behind the door and open the door, she seemed to be in distress, and that's it.
How would you describe her demeanor when you had a chance to observe her just a little bit later?
A little bit later, in my own word, is nonchalant.
No further questions of this witness.
A journal entry which was written shortly after Danielle filed for divorce is submitted into evidence, and the state characterized it as a sign that she was worried she would no longer be financially stable. They say that this is an indication that she was plotting to kill him.
I filed for divorce last week. Mike should be getting papers served soon. I am so sad, so hurt, and torn apart. I have had to really dig deep and rely on Faith and my neighbor Jan. Mike's betrayal, a second time with that Nicole woman, is the worst hurt ever. I gave him so many opportunities to build something deeper with me, but he is a ridiculous man. Sad. The kids are now witnessing his untrustworthy behavior, and he is still blaming me, trying to belittle me any chance he gets to kids. He is so insecure and doesn't have a clue how to treat something sacred and meaningful. I had an anxious, nervous stomach all day. He said he is looking forward to moving out and living in the fancy Lake Killarney apartment. He makes me so sick. There were days with his working out, meetings, lies, girlfriend, delusions, threats, and reckless abandon of his family. It seems like he will always try to tear me down, hurt me, win the power. He's relentless, but I think people are starting to see how transparent he is. I wish I could elevate to some peace finally. I love my kids so much. They deserve it as well. I can't believe where I am. What does God want? I keep telling myself he needs me. People, my life the last 8 years or so has been so hard, scary, and unpleasant. Michael is moving out April 1st. I wish I could never see him again. I feel like he, if given any opportunity, will end up destroying me totally. He has been so cruel to me. It's so disturbingly weird sometimes, irrational even. Why am I writing about this depressing stuff? I think about it way too much in my head as it is. I can't wait until I can write that something wonderful happened. Things are so bad between Mike and I. Never imagined how our family could come to such a tragic place. I have so much guilt about the kids. We were so toxic together and still are. All I ever wanted was a closeness and a bond, one that I could feel, honor, and cherish. I'm afraid he isn't going to continue paying the bills. He often threatens me financially. Will this horrible relationship ever end? Absolutely, the marriage will, but we still have to deal for the kids. I am not sure he is sane. Extreme narcissist. Fluctuates Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I need money and not quite sure how to play cards for divorce. Credit card is high. I'm going to have to get something in case Mike tries to stop paying my bills, our bills. Of course, I want to work, but I might have to wait out the dream job until later. Ugh, this journal has been a negative Nelly. That will change as I manifest. More positivity, I'm sorry.
Danielle's story indicates that she was in a heavy physical conflict at the time of Michael's stabbing.
What are we seeing here in photograph 163?
The back of her arm.
Is this the only injury that you observed, other than the injuries to her wrists?
Yes.
Had you seen other injuries, or had she identified other injuries, would you have documented them?
Yes.
I actually didn't find this information coming up throughout the trial, but I do find it interesting to highlight nonetheless. A 911 call from 2018, placed by Michael. It occurred months before the stabbing. Within it, as you'll hear, it shows that Michael believed his wife was a danger to herself and others.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Yes. We need a car here at 1231 Temple Drive, Winter Park, Florida. There's a woman that's a danger to herself and to others right now.
Gentlemen, it's a danger to us. Okay, stay on the line. I'm going to have to transfer us over to Winter Park. Let me talk first when they answer, okay?
You better go in your room. Please, Dan.
911, do you need police, fire, or medical? The transfer for police at 1231 Temple Drive.
Will you stop? Oh, all right. I will call you back. I'll call you back in 5 minutes.
What is going on there? Hello? Yeah, I'm still there. He didn't give me a lot of information. He just said that there was a woman who was a danger to herself. Okay. And that was it? Yeah, that's all. And he called on a 911 only phone, so...
In addition to that call, there's an arrest video from 2018, which depicts Danielle being taken into custody for fighting with a man and a woman at a gas station. When paramedics arrived to treat her injuries, she kicked, shoved, and bit the person trying to help her. Other statements that I found from Michael indicate that over the years, he was in fact, at the very least, aware about his wife's violent tendencies. A neighbor recalls that Michael told them once that his wife is crazy, and he jokingly said that as long as he hides the steak knives, everything will be okay. Michael also wrote to a friend once in an email that his family will be moving with him shortly, unless his wife divorces his ass or kills him first. Neither is beyond possibility. Going back to evidence from the trial, a neighbor of the Redlick household takes the stand to provide his account of arguments that he witnessed and who he believed to be the main aggressor.
On one instance, there was a situation where Michael was coming out of the door, out of his front door, and Danielle was just behind him, screaming at him. He just
So she was yelling at him?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you see Michael yelling back at her?
No, actually, he was very, very quiet, and he eventually just went and got in his car and drove off. But he was extremely quiet.
Was there a second incident where you saw Danielle yelling at Michael?
There were numerous ones, actually. I can't remember the exact situation, but primarily they were in the same basis that I discussed there, and it came at different times during the day. One time it was in the morning.
Once again, not going into specifics. So you saw on multiple occasions Danielle yelling at Michael, is that correct?
Yes.
And Michael not yelling back, is that true?
He was very passive.
A co-worker of Michael's takes the stand, who worked alongside him on the date, January 11th, right in the center of all of this arguing that Danielle testified about. By her account, Michael was uncontrollably angry, in a fit of rage, and the state questioned, surely if he were experiencing such intense emotion, that would have been something he couldn't hide. People who worked with him and who knew him well would have noticed.
Did you actually get to interact with him that day?
Yes.
Did he seem like his normal self?
Yes, he did. Just tired.
From a long week?
Tired from a long week, from a long morning, because he started earlier than usual.
The state has a lot of questions about why she deleted messages to and from Michael and Caesar whilst her husband lay dead on the floor. Why did it take her 11 hours to contact 911, especially since it's proven that she was using her phone throughout the night? Why did she attempt to clean up the scene? Where did all these other injuries on Michael come from? The slice under his eye and the incise wound on his side. And a big point of conflict was her use of a dating website at 7:22 a.m. Why would she feel the need to peruse profiles of other men whilst her husband's body lay next to her?
This is evidence that the user of this particular dating website on January 12th, 2019, interacted with your dating website.
That's correct. 5:22 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, the application was opened. The user then viewed their conversations page.
Tell this jury what time the user of this particular dating website was interacting with your website.
That would be 2 hours later, which I believe is around 8:27 or 22.
Well, 5 plus 2.
5 plus 2 is 7.
There we go.
So 7 a.m.
So 7:22 a.m., the user is on your dating website.
That's correct.
The defense puts up a hefty fight on this one and manages to prove that when she opened the dating website on her Safari app, she stayed on it for a grand total of 13 seconds. They opine that likely the dating service was the last page opened on Safari the day before. So when she initiated the app the next morning, it reopened the Meet Mindful page before she quickly shifted away and started researching how to slit one's own wrist.
Did you get on any dating sites?
No,
Is that something you were thinking at all about that morning?
not at all.
Is on her Safari app on the afternoon of January 11th. She closes the app, but does not close the website. She then opens Safari app again on the morning of January 12th. It opens directly to the last page she had visited, and then 13 seconds later, she's on Google, Googling how to slit a wrist.
Correct.
If I pull out my iPhone I go to Safari, I go to whatever website it may be. I don't close out the actual website, I just close out the app.
Yes, sir.
I come back, I hit the Safari app, it loads it back up onto the same website I was last on.
Yes, sir.
And that's what's happened here. So the evidence does show is that 12 seconds, 13 seconds after she's opening up Safari, she's on Google deciding how to slit your wrist.
Yes, sir.
This leads us into the defense's side of the argument. Danielle's sister and friend take the stand to give their accounts surrounding incidents of prior abuse within the Redlick relationship.
My kids were spending the night at their house and they were ready to come home, so I went to go pick my children up and I walked in the front door as I would always, and I was saying, "Dance, dance," and I walked straight back to where when you come in the front door, if you walk straight back, her room was back there looking for her. And when I turned the corner, I heard Michael calling her a bitch. And when I looked over, she was in the back of her closet.
When you say she, who's she?
I'm sorry, Danielle was in the back of their walk-in closet with her back up against the wall. And Michael was in her face, towering over her to where she couldn't get around him.
Was Michael yelling at her?
Yes.
Did it look like an aggressive situation?
Yes.
Ms. Brown, have you ever observed any injuries to Danielle?
Yes, one time.
And when was that?
That was in the spring of 2018. Can't recall which month, but sometime in the spring between March and May. She had come to my house to come pick up my son Brian for the day. She was going to take him and her son Sawyer to go do something for the day.
And what did you observe?
I observed a large black and blue eye. She was wearing a ball cap and sunglasses.
So did you immediately see this black and blue eye?
Not immediately.
What were the circumstances that led you to see this black and blue eye?
So she had pulled up in the driveway. She walked up to the front door. We had conversation at the front door for some time. And then I walked her and my son back out to the car. And she slipped off her sunglasses briefly. And I happened to just see it. It was obvious.
Did Ms. Redlick tell you how she got that injury?
She did not.
A handyman takes the stand to talk about 2 separate occasions where he had to come around and fix doors in the house. From his observations, the doors had clearly been kicked off of the hinges by someone. The state had presented this idea that Michael was attacked and likely was defending himself from Danielle wielding a knife. Thus, how he received slice wounds on the eye, his side, and a bruise on his arm and inside his lip. The defense pick at this when the medical examiner takes the stand and highlight a statement she made after the autopsy that Michael displayed no signs of classic defense wounds. This indicates to the defense counsel that Michael was the aggressor and received one unexpected stab to the shoulder in the heat of him attacking her. Thus why he doesn't have any cuts in between his fingers and across his hands. Many of the questions that were raised in the state's argument are addressed in Danielle's direct examination, starting with why she told the 911 operator that Michael may have suffered a heart attack.
Well, he had actually had heart issues. So, and literally 2 weeks before, he had come home from the doctor with a warning for instructions to give a certain amount of blood because of his testosterone treatments could be causing heart complications.
So did you believe that he had current heart issues that could have caused a heart attack?
Yes.
But how did the blood play with that? When you see all the blood, what were you thinking there in terms of the heart attack?
Well, I knew that he had been injured pretty severely, and I just thought maybe it triggered it, or maybe it was the injury. I didn't want to believe that, but...
You heard the call yesterday, or again, whenever it was played.
Yes.
You don't ever tell him that you stabbed your husband, do you? In the call?
No.
Why?
I was scared. I didn't really know how to handle that situation.
didn't want to incriminate myself.
After you've made it to the hospital, you have an interview with Detective Ware.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the same day you came in?
Same day I came in.
Was it the same day you went to the hospital?
Yes.
At that point, did you ever tell Detective Ware that you had stabbed your husband?
No.
What was the basis for not wanting to do that?
I just thought that there was a time to tell the story. I'm not sure that that was the moment. I didn't think that she needed to know that.
So even your own kids, is that a conversation that you wanted to have with them?
Yes,
Explain what
absolutely.
occurred? But you didn't.
No.
Were you concerned about the reaction if you talked to your kids about what happened?
Yes.
Ms. Redlick, did you hate your husband?
No, not at all.
Did you want to kill him?
No.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
As one would expect, there's quite a hefty cross-examination that came Danielle's way. Here's a few excerpts from it, where I'll drop you in. The state's attorney is questioning Danielle about why she chose to perform CPR over calling 911.
So you did CPR on a dead man?
At that moment, I was hoping that he wasn't.
Okay, so you thought there was a chance that this man could still be saved, because otherwise you wouldn't have done CPR,
I suppose,
right?
yes.
So you're standing there, you have your phone in your hand, you know, I think this man could be saved. And the best way of saving him is to dial 911, correct, Ms. Redlick?
Yes.
You mentioned on direct that you had no business doing CPR, did you not?
Yes, I'm not trained.
You're not trained, you have no idea how to do CPR.
No.
Instead of taking your finger and doing three little moves, 911, you begin to perform amateur CPR on him, correct?
Yes.
So you stood in that home with the power to call for help, and you let your husband bleed to death on that floor.
He had already bled to death. When I was doing the blowing into his mouth, I was wondering if I could recover him or something. I didn't.
So which is it?
And I thought there.
Objection.
that
Can
needs to
she
be done
answer the question?
immediately. So.
Hold on, stop.
Which one is it? Is he dead, or you think it's possible to save
Well,
him?
if he could be recovered, something would have to be done immediately. And so, yes, I thought perhaps I should do that.
Are you telling this jury that you thought it was impossible to both dial 911 and do CPR? You thought
No,
was
it's
either
not
or?
impossible. No.
So you could have done it,
Yes.
and you chose not to.
I dialed 911 right after that.
No. You, in that moment, you chose not to.
Right.
So in these fleeting moments, you think Mr. Redlick can be saved. You choose not to save him.
I wouldn't put it that way, no.
The cleaning effort starts very shortly after you realize Mr. Redlick is dead.
Yes.
You had your phone in the 11 o'clock hour, correct?
Yes.
You're using your phone in the 11 o'clock hour.
I think I had my phone, yes.
Well, you were using your phone in the 11 o'clock hour.
I don't know that I was using it.
Well, what hour do you think you started deleting text messages?
I guess it was between 11 and 12 or something like that.
So 11 o'clock hour, you're beginning to delete stuff from your phone, correct?
Or midnight hour. I'm not sure.
Did not call 911 in the 11 o'clock hour.
No.
You have your phone, yes?
Yes.
You know Mr. Redlick is dead on the floor, yes?
Yes.
And you do not call 911.
No.
You would have this jury believe that you fell asleep next to your dead husband, correct?
Yes, eventually.
And that would have been in the 1 o'clock hour, correct?
Don't know exactly when I fell asleep.
Could have been later than 1 o'clock.
I don't know.
And you wake up at 7, you still have your phone.
Yes.
It's still working.
Yes.
And you begin sort of, at this point now, we know, picking up towels and sort of tidying things up some more.
I don't know if I did it right at that moment.
Okay. Could have been a little later.
Yeah.
Well, how long did you let yourself bleed, Miss Redlick, before you dialed 911?
I don't remember how long I bled. I just don't remember. I don't know.
You told Miss Tucker that he made a stabbing motion toward himself, correct?
He said, "What are you going to stab me?" That's what I believe I told her.
And you told her something. If that was an exact quote, you gave Miss Redlick the impression that Mr. Redlick disarmed you and had the knife, correct?
Yes.
And that was a lie.
Yes.
You chose to lie.
I lied.
You chose to lie.
Yes.
You were willing to lie if you think it'll serve your interests, correct?
No.
Well, you thought it served your interest to lie to the folks that we've talked about thus far, right?
I think it served my interest of being confused and not knowing how to handle the situation.
The lie was serving your interests. You admit that.
Yes.
So you were willing to lie if it serves your interests.
Yes.
After a 7-day trial, both sides present closing arguments. The defense say that the state is making their case out of the idea that Danielle killed her husband out of hatred and ill will. They ask the question, what evidence do they have to prove this? The fact that she wanted a divorce? That she was upset with him over infidelity? At best, they have a few angry emails, which don't indicate at all that she wanted him physically harmed. The state had said, in those angry emails, she used some terminology about bleeding to death, that the pain Michael caused her felt like a knife wound from a dull blade, much like the blade she used to kill her husband. To argue this, Danielle's team ask, how many people have felt this way about someone they're angry at? It doesn't mean she's a murderer, and it's simply coincidental that she used knives and bleeding metaphors to express her frustrations. The defense say that Michael was controlling, abusive, and overbearing. He viewed his wife as a possession, something that he bought and paid for, and when she tried to break free of his control, when he couldn't pretend to himself that she was still his plaything, the proof of that being messages to other men, he couldn't handle it and snapped, the rage driving him to attack her so intensely that her only choice was to fight back or die. They acknowledge that her actions following her husband's death were by no means the best way to handle a situation like that. But those actions cannot be used as hard proof that she murdered someone.
She's confronted with a situation she clearly was not prepared to handle. Doesn't make her guilty of murder. Doesn't make her guilty of manslaughter. Unless you are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that she did not act in self-defense, stuff afterward doesn't really matter for that charge. She didn't get rid of the knives. They're there on the ground, on the floor, nearby to where the attack happened. She doesn't get rid of his phone. She doesn't leave the home. She doesn't flee, go anywhere. You saw the Google search. You can take that back with you and see all of her web history. There's no searches for how to get rid of body, how to get rid of blood evidence, how to dispose of anything. Came out, she saw the sudden, cold end to a tumultuous marriage laying on the ground, and she couldn't process it. And then her actions afterwards prove that.
The state, on the other hand, view things much differently, characterizing Danielle as a manipulative and calculated liar, one who wanted a Romeo and Juliet love story and wasn't getting it from her husband, hadn't been getting it from him for her entire married life. They say her emails prove that she acted with hatred and anger. Her direct words in one of them are, quote, "You're a lying, rotten son of a bitch." They say this is what was in her mind when she plunged the knife into his shoulder. They also question the oddity of these other injuries on Michael. Where did they come from? She certainly didn't mention them in her testimony, and the defense counsel didn't ask her one single question about them. At best, the jury is meant to assume that he somehow, for some reason, sliced himself up after he was stabbed. What more than likely happened was an argument took place between the two, and she stabbed at him in a fit of rage before ultimately plunging the knife into his shoulder. Maybe she didn't fully intend to kill him, but it most definitely wasn't an act of self-defense. The state argue that Michael held the power within the dynamic of their relationship. He controlled finances, and to a degree, he controlled her. The little power she held in this relationship was the fact that she had caught him speaking to other women. She held this over him, used it as a way to get what she wanted, used it to kick him out of the house, to get him to continue paying her bills and topping up her credit card. And when he uncovered that she was doing the very thing that she demonized him for, it sent her into a panic. The divorce following that was going to be difficult. He would fight to ensure that she got as little as possible. Her future was in ruins, and this brought her to the point where she snapped and attacked him with a knife.
And so she is who she says she is. She is a person who will lie and lie, try to influence witnesses, and do whatever she can to avoid responsibility. Today that ends.
Having heard both sides through, 2 days of deliberation pass, and the jury reaches a verdict.
State of Florida versus Danielle Justine Redlick. Verdict as to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. So say we all. Signed, juror badge number 283, 4%. Special finding, this page was left blank. Verdict as to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of tampering with physical evidence as charged in the information. So say we all. Signed, juror badge number 283, 4%.
As you heard, Danielle is found not guilty on the charge of murder, but is guilty of tampering with evidence. She's sentenced to 364 days in prison, with credit for 364 days time served, and 12 months probation. It's at this point in the video that I finished presenting the trial, and will now go over a few thoughts I have about this case. And wow, what a tricky one we have on our hands here. Without knowing the intimate details of what this relationship looked like over the years, I am far from having the ability to confidently place my opinion on one side or the other. We heard a lot of Danielle's side of the story, but what of Michael's? He doesn't have the ability to defend his name in the face of a mountain of accusations that he was an abusive man. I don't say that with the intention to put my opinion against Danielle, and if her words are true, diminish the impact of suffering domestic violence. But I do have some questions regarding her story. Yet, for every question posed, I can build a counter-argument to my own thoughts. For example, personally, near the end of her testimony where she claimed that she didn't call 911 for 11 hours due to thinking of her kids and being in a state of shock, that really raises my eyebrow. But in saying that, I've never been in a situation even remotely close to the horror scene that was her house, so potentially yes. She may have acted in a way that is unrecognizable to me due to suffering a mental break or something like that. When trying to come to an opinion in a situation like this, I try to picture both sides of the argument. On one hand, I can absolutely sympathize with her, a person who endured a lifetime of miserable marriage. But on the other hand, I can also envision her as the aggressor. But simply, I don't know the answer. There's not enough evidence, context, and a severe lack of witness testimony that could attest to the intricacies of their relationship, at least the abusive side of it, which again, can signal either that there was absolutely zero abuse, or that he was a textbook abuser, keeping the violence behind closed doors, while she is a textbook victim, not speaking out and silently suffering. To me, her story is believable but not. Her actions, understandable in a non-understandable way. I've been thinking about this for weeks now whilst working on this video, and I'm no closer to knowing how I feel about it than I was when I started. I could ramble for quite a while about how I would feel should I have definitive proof that Danielle's testimony is true or false. how she shows textbook signs of being a victim of domestic abuse, or on the other hand, how she shows signs of a highly intelligent individual who's aware of what to say to look as though they are a victim of abuse. I could rant about how I find the stepfather-stepdaughter relationship to be troubling in nature, how according to Danielle's story, Michael could be viewed as an emotionally manipulative, financially controlling man, or if her story isn't to be believed, how Michael seemed like a genuinely good guy who was in love and was doing his best to keep up with and to keep his much younger wife happy. Her journal entries can be viewed as vulnerable insights into a ruptured mind, or calculated writings from an author who knew she would one day have an audience. Her emails can be seen as truthful displays of frustration brought on by an emotionally torturous husband, or the nonsensical ramblings of a narcissist who doesn't believe they are getting what they deserve. Was Michael an absolute horrible person towards his wife, as outlined in her testimony, or a beautiful human being who has had his good name obliterated following death, with no ability to defend himself? I could go on and on. Instead of continuing to drag you through a journey of circular, non-productive thoughts on my part, I'll look at something which I'm confident about, and that being, the jury got it right in regards to there not being enough evidence for murder, in my opinion. Despite how one might feel about Danielle, it would be hard to convince me that the state had a slam dunk case here. The sheer lack of hard evidence made everything rest on Danielle's testimony. But even then, had she chosen to not take the stand, I still don't think the state was able to prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Turning my thoughts to the victim now, Michael Redlick. Despite what your opinion on this case may be, he achieved a lot in his life. I'll go through some quotes from people who knew him now. Former staff of Cleveland Works send their deepest condolences. Michael's support and contributions to this important agency working to improve the lives of those struggling to gain employment and contribute to their families and communities was so appreciated and made a deep impact. I had the pleasure of working with and getting to know Red in Memphis, where we both worked for the Grizzlies. As many friends have shared, Red always had a big smile and he always made things fun. Though we hadn't stayed in close touch, I am deeply saddened that he has passed. We will always remember the way Mike, aka Red, lit up a room. His smile, laughter, and kindness will be in our hearts forever. We enjoyed every moment we had with him, from time spent together with our families, dining out, and enjoying the Indy 500 together. He will be missed. Thanks for everything, Red. From the instant we met, when Mike was welcoming me into the family at the National Sports Forum, I counted myself a very lucky individual, bonding immediately over our shared Cleveland roots. We became great friends through a similar outlook on business principles and the way you treat those around you. Every conversation was full of laughter and often touched on whom I could help, because that was Mike. Looking to support the Devo students and alumni and his colleagues in the industry, and he always asked what he could do to help me. His devotion to Jaden and Sawyer was so clear, he couldn't have been more proud of them, and lived for the experiences he could share with them, from scrambling for Harry Styles tickets to finding ways into the MLB All-Star games. I'll continue to honor Mike in every way that I can through channeling his generosity and thoughtfulness in the industry and with those around me. He was an exceptional friend, and I miss him deeply. There are many broken hearts in the Sports Business Management program at UCF. I have received more than 250 emails and texts from students and alumni expressing their sadness for the loss, but also their gratitude for all the ways Mike helped them. After a long career in the sports industry, Mike said he came here to give back to the next generation and to give his children a place to call home for a long time. I have not seen a more loving father who was so proud of his two children, and he recently told me that his time at UCF was the happiest professional time in his career. Mike will be missed terribly and always be remembered for all he gave to us while he was here. He left with many people loving him. My wife, Anne, and I were among them. That wraps up the quotes that I chose to read in this video. Where I'll leave you is by thinking about other victims in this case, focusing on Michael's daughter, Jaden. When Danielle was being sentenced for the tampering charges, Jaden felt like she couldn't handle seeing her mother, but she wanted her words heard. She writes a letter, which is read out for the courtroom to hear.
Attorney Cheney Mason is here on behalf of Jaden and Sawyer and has a statement that he's going to read for them as their attorney.
Mr. Mason, you can come forward and read the statement.
As you are aware, I was appointed by the court to act as a guardian ad litem for the children in this case, some 3 years ago. And I have an impact statement that has been written by the daughter, who's now 17 years of age. I want to start this off by saying the only reason I am not personally reading the statement to you all myself is because I simply do not ever want to be in a room with Danielle Drohan ever again. I feel as though there has been absolutely no justice served for my father or his family, including myself and my younger brother. It takes a lot for me to talk about these things and be so vulnerable in front of total strangers. So I please just ask that you all listen to me and please take my feelings into consideration. Since I was about 7 years old, I have endured insane amounts of trauma. This trauma all stems from the same thing, Danielle Drohan. And yes, I'm referring to her as her first name and maiden name because I feel as though she should not even have the privilege of having the same last name as me or my father. I refuse to call her mother because she was never a decent mother figure to me. There were a great deal of things I was not permitted to say in court when I was testifying, which I feel is absolutely insane. I still am unable to even scratch the mere surface of the trauma I am referring to. All I want is justice for my father. It breaks my heart into a million pieces over and over to hear people side with such an abusive, horrible person and then continue to bash on a dead man who isn't here to defend himself. Sure, my dad was no angel and definitely had faults, but he was the kindest, most caring person, and I'm sure the other people who had the chance to know him would vouch for that. He was so kind, gentle, and he never laid a hand on a single person in my family, not myself, Sawyer, or Danielle. I don't even remember him spanking me. My dad always advocated for love and acceptance. He loved everyone and treated everyone the way he wanted to be treated. He was a great man with great values and loved his family. He would never hit a woman. He took my brother and I to so many different ball games, always took me out on our father-daughter days, and he was always in a good mood. Him and I used to watch Saturday Night Live together every Saturday for 5 years straight. He took me and Sawyer to the movies all the time and made sure we were always happy, fed, and well taken care of. He always stood up for others. He always wanted to joke around and play whatever game or talk about literally anything. He loved to talk, people watch, and get to know people. He loved others, and everyone loved him. He was not a bad person. I am so angry about the way he has been portrayed, so extremely angry. He was the best dad I ever could have asked for. I remember at certain points, I would imagine Sawyer and I staying with him full time if my parents were to divorce. I have no regret in saying that, and I mean it wholeheartedly. It absolutely breaks my heart into a million pieces that Sawyer has to grow up without him. I do too, but Sawyer no longer has the amazing dad to show him how to grow up and be just like him. We are both extremely heartbroken to have our pops ripped from our world so suddenly and to have been lied to about it for so long after. We miss our pops so much. I would do anything to bring him back. Someone took him from our world and ruined our childhoods, let alone the start of our lives and futures. We have endured so much since he was taken from us that it has been difficult to process a natural grieving process. We have suffered such incredible amounts of trauma to the point where our bodies have reacted to it. I have had nightmares for the past 3 years about Danielle, and more specifically about certain decisions she has made. Sawyer has nightmares too. I have developed a near fear of being murdered. I have had phases of extreme paranoia, and I've gone through phases where I've been so depressed over the situation that I was unable to take care of myself for a long time. I've lost a great amount of weight, and for a while I would get extremely triggered and break down over someone even saying the words dad or parent. I've had an entire school gossip about me and my situation, as most of Winter Park. People recognize my last name and often already know about this so-called news story that is my life. I lost everything at once, and it was broadcasted to the world, and I have always given the short end of the stick. I am just now getting to be okay again, but this reopened so many wounds that I genuinely thought could start to heal from. You may all be fooled by the incredible mask this woman presents to you all, but I am not. My father did not get away in time. I am not worried. I am so worried for my brother. Judge, please make some kind of stipulation that Danielle not be allowed near myself and Sawyer, so we don't have to be re-traumatized like we have been already. We're both settled into our new life without our dad, and we want to be left in peace. It took us a while to get here, and we deserve that at the very least.